This is the Fujifilm X100VI, and I've been lucky enough to own this camera on the day that it came out earlier this year. And I say lucky enough because I know a ton of people who ordered at the same time as me and still haven't had their pre-order filled almost a year later. And there's honestly really good reason for that. This camera has completely changed my entire relationship with photography. So to just take a step back for a couple of seconds, I've been a content creator for almost 4 years now. Initially, when I first became a content creator, I was mainly a photographer and I only did photography. But with the recent rise of short form video content, and I really shouldn't say recent, it's been a couple of years now, that's been the main focus online. Most creators have shifted to video, and even if they are still mainly photographers, they find some way to incorporate their photos into video content. So because of that, initially, because I was a photographer, I would only take raw photos. So I started off on the Canon EOS RP and then quickly upgraded to the Canon R5. So every single time I would want to post some kind of content in the early days, I would take a photo in raw with my camera, hop onto Lightroom or Photoshop and spend about 10 to 15, maybe longer, depending on how nuanced the edit was, to create a piece of work. Now, I mentioned the rise of short form video content because this totally shifted my attention away from photography to video like most people, and honestly it just wasn't worth creating photographs anymore. So slowly photography faded into the background for me. This was until I got the Fujifilm X100VI. And for a long time, I thought to myself, what is it that makes this camera so special? The photo quality is not significantly better than my Canon R5. Don't get me wrong, the Canon R5 does take higher megapixel photos, but every single camera that you buy today is good. The quality is definitely better than a phone, though. I won't go that far. I would say it's actually significantly better than a phone, but I found myself wondering, what is it that draws me to this camera? And it turns out that it's the experience and the ease of use. I've had the opportunity to take the Fujifilm X100VI to 6 different countries now since I've owned it. And every single time I've taken it on a trip, every single photo from that trip has been on this camera. I haven't taken a single photo on my phone. I have my Canon R5C with me. I don't take any photos on it. That camera is literally just reserved for filming video. Every single photo that you see on my feed or in my content or anywhere in the last year, every single piece of content that you've seen from me or any photos that you've seen from me on social media related to photography have all been on the Fujifilm X100VI. And I really believe that this is the perfect camera for so many reasons. Firstly, just look at the size. It's literally the size of my smartphone. If I can just grab it, it's pretty much the size of my smartphone. In some aspects it's even smaller, and so the ease of use and portability is automatically there. The speed at which it turns on and you're able to take a photo and then go back to enjoying your trip is phenomenal. You don't want to be slowed down by your gear, and the Fujifilm X100VI definitely meets those expectations. Now, speaking of which, I take all of my photos in manual. That's one thing I didn't let go even when switching to the Fujifilm X100VI from my Canon R5C for photography. And even while shooting in manual, this does not feel cumbersome like other cameras. Now, what I mean by that is that on my R5C, I have dials and things that I can change to adjust my manual settings, but on the Fujifilm X100VI, it just feels so much more natural. There's one dial that controls both ISO and shutter speed, and the front lens, which controls aperture, and they're all just so tactile, and I just know where everything is without even having to look. Now, that might seem like just a wishy-washy reason for why the Fujifilm X100VI is great, but it's honestly something that you really have to experience for yourself to understand. The focal length is also fixed at a 35mm equivalent, which again might bring up the question, isn't it better to use my Canon R5C where I can zoom into different focal lengths, or even my iPhone where I have the ability to pick from a few different lenses? And initially I thought that this would be a huge constraint, but I was ready to take on the challenge because I thought that it would challenge me creatively. But honestly, it turns out that 35mm is the perfect focal length for almost any situation, and I now understand why it's a lot of people's favorite focal length. But obviously the biggest thing has been the film simulations. Now every single photo that you've seen played throughout this video is obviously from the Fujifilm X100VI, but something that might surprise you and you probably should have caught on to by now, as I mentioned that I only used to shoot in RAW, is every single photo that I've taken on this camera has been in JPEG. Initially I had the RAW backup setting turned on, and as time moved by I found those RAW files just sitting on my hard drive doing nothing, so I've completely turned it off, and every single photo that I take on the Fujifilm X100VI is in JPEG. And thanks to the film simulations, the photos look great. They look like they're edited, which I think is one of the biggest advantages, and again contributes to the experience of using this camera, and why so many people are drawn to it is that you're able to get fantastic, incredible, high quality photos that look edited without ever having to edit them or do any work. And honestly, you don't even need to know how the film simulations work. You can head over to the website called Fuji X Weekly, and they have tons of film simulations and recipes on there that you can just copy to get the exact look that you're looking for and have fantastic photos within seconds. And so when I say that the Fujifilm X100VI has completely changed my relationship with photography, and the year anniversary of it is coming up, so I really wanted to make a video, I really do mean that. This camera has made me love photography again. I take it with me to wherever I can, honestly, to birthday parties, to outings, if I'm just out for a walk, because it's as portable as your phone, but it opens up a world of possibilities and qualities similar to higher end cameras like my Canon R5C. And my only complaint about this camera is the fact that there aren't more of them out there, and I don't know if Fujifilm does this intentionally or if it's truly a stock issue, but the fact that people that pre-ordered almost a year ago now still don't have their cameras is really disappointing. And honestly, it sucks, because I feel like a lot more people would fall in love with photography again if they were able to get their hands on this camera or even the Fujifilm X100VI. And unfortunately, I just don't see that happening anytime soon, because with the holidays coming up, I would love to recommend this camera as a gift for the photography enthusiast in your life. But the reality is that you just will not be able to get this camera without grossly overpaying for it, which is just something that I wouldn't recommend, because while possible to find deals and maybe find it in store, the chances of that being low, it's still possible. But yeah, I really just wanted to come on here and just share my thoughts about the Fujifilm X100VI, because recently I've just found myself picking up this camera so often, and I just have been really loving it, and I wanted to just make this video for the person who was maybe on the fence about buying it, or maybe you have the opportunity to buy it. I would say if you can have any chance at all to buy it at retail, you should do that, or jump on that immediately, or whatever chance you get. If you can buy this at retail, definitely buy it. But yeah, also I have sort of a new lighting setup here, put a couple of additional lights, some ambience if you will, and would love your feedback on what you guys think on the setting. Anyways, that's it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. A little bit more casual and unscripted than usual, but that's it for this one. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, keep creating.